Now, there are some fantastic gimmicks and characters on WWE television in 2022, from Big Time Bex to the EST of WWE to the head of the table to Sami Zayn's conspiracy-ridden character. However, for every fantastic gimmick that WWE currently has on television, there's also those gimmicks that are downright terrible and make fans question what on earth WWE were thinking when they came up with the gimmick and implemented it on WWE programming. But which ones were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 of the worst WWE gimmicks of 2022. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Also check out Wrestlelamia.co.uk and our own wrestling channel, Incredible. Number 10. Raquel Rodriguez. During a time in NXT, Raquel Rodriguez found great success. It was clear that WWE had big plans for her, and this potential mainly came from her size and stature rather than anything visible in the ring. It's hard to define what Rodriguez's character was in NXT, but she was a dominating figure in the women's division, whether that be as a heel or as a babyface. Whereas on the main roster, Rodriguez's gimmick is that she smiles and she's just happy to be there. This gimmick has fallen completely flat as fans have literally nothing whatsoever to connect to. The former NXT Women's Champion needs a real gimmick with an actual direction and purpose, or she may find herself on the latest list of WWE roster cuts. Number 9. Akira Tezawa. Akira Tezawa was one of the biggest breakout stars of the 205 Live brand, and fans were curious to see what direction WWE would take with his character following the brand's cancellation. They decided to turn Tezawa into a ninja, and he would wear a traditional ninja outfit and use exaggerated facial expressions. This gimmick change received a ton of backlash when it first debuted, as some fans believed it was insensitive and tasteless. At first, Tezawa would appear to have a group of ninjas, and he would even have the future Omos on his side. Eventually, WWE would tone the gimmick down, but Tezawa still remains a prominent feature in the infamous 24/7 division, and he still wears the ninja attire for all of his matches. Number 8. Madcap Moss. WWE sees Madcap Moss as one of their future stars of the company. Even the beloved Paul Heyman states that he sees a very bright future for Moss. While Moss has received a substantial push, his past two gimmicks have really held him back from building up a connection with the audience. Moss previously had a comedic gimmick alongside Happy Corbin, but this was holding him back. WWE then made the executive decision to book a babyface turn for him, and the comedic side of him would be completely stripped back. The problem is that this babyface turn just resulted in Moss turning into a generic no-nonsense good guy, and this would ultimately be his new gimmick. Moss needs a gimmick which stands out, as his current character presentation is weak and certainly has a short shelf life. Number 7. Shanky. Audible groans were heard across the world when WWE decided to turn Jinder Mahal's tag team partner Shanky into a dancing babyface. This gimmick has been done time and time again in WWE, and it rarely results in creating any long-term stars. Whilst this type of gimmick is certainly popular with the younger members of the WWE audience, it without a doubt gets stale extremely fast. Shanky has potential, but the dancing gimmick is just going to limit his growth in the company. If WWE truly sees Shanky as a future player in the company, then they need to make a conscious effort to revert to the drawing board and find a more suitable gimmick for the 31-year-old. Number 6. TBar. TBar made his main roster debut in 2020 as part of the infamous Retribution stable. This new gimmick would strip away everything that made the former Dominik Dijakovic special, and he would now wear a Bane-style mask and a completely new attire. This stable flopped hard and virtually ruined every member who joined it. Following the group disbanding, fans hoped that he would simply go back to his old NXT character, but WWE had other ideas. For the past 2 years, the TBar gimmick has remained, and although the mask is gone, his established history in NXT is never mentioned, and the majority of the awkward mannerisms and motions that debuted with TBar's character are still in place. Number 5. Wendy Chew. One of the strengths of the NXT 2.0 brand is that there's a clear focus on gimmicks and characters. There are some rather compelling characters in the brand such as Bron Breakker, Carmelo Hayes, and Tony D'Angelo. However, there are certain gimmicks which are questionable to say the least. The Wendy Chew gimmick is basically that she's always tired and likes to doze off at any time her body sees fit. This gimmick has gone one step further thanks to Chew wearing pajamas as her in-ring attire along with slippers and an eye mask. This is one of the more unusual characters on the brand, and fans have had mixed reactions to it so far. It's fun at first, but after seeing the gimmick in action for a few matches, the gimmick gets very old, and it could be only a matter of time before Chew is repackaged completely. Number 4. Max Dupree. When the news broke that WWE planned on calling LA Knight up to the main roster, fans were expecting huge things. Knight was one of the top stars in NXT 2.0, and he had every tool it took to be a major star on the main roster. Knight was a fantastic promo guy, and he was someone who Vince McMahon should have really taken to. He would debut Knight on the main roster with a completely new gimmick, and he would now be known as Max Dupree, and he had set up his own modeling agency. He would join forces with Mansoor and Mace, and they would be part of his selective, apparently illustrious modeling agency known as Maximum Male Models. This gimmick is a huge letdown and is a waste of Dupree's talents. It also looks like WWE have no plans for him to be an active in-ring talent, and they want him to transition into a managerial role, which is incredibly disappointing as Dupree is a solid hand in the ring and could add much needed depth to WWE's roster. Number 3. Butch. In March of 2022, Pete Dunne was called up to the main roster. Dunne is well established for being one of the best in-ring talents in the world, and WWE decided to completely ignore his wrestling skill set and alter his entire gimmick. Dunne would be now known as Butch, and he would be associated with Sheamus and Ridge Holland. This character is an unhinged maniac who can't be controlled by anyone. Whilst this gimmick isn't the worst idea WWE could have come up with for Dunne, it's rather lame, and there was nothing wrong with the former NXT UK champion just being Pete Dunne. Dunne would discuss the negative reaction to his gimmick during an interview with Metro UK, and stated, "My biggest inspirations in wrestling are people like Regal. Some of his best work was the straight-laced stuff later in his career, right? But earlier in his run, he was a commissioner doing all sorts of funny stuff. People like Daniel Bryan when he was here, part of what got him here was the stuff with Kane. Everyone has variety, you can't just be one thing forever, and I've been with the company for 6 years. It's refreshing for me personally to be able to focus on something else and have a different approach to it, and sort of broaden my horizons with wrestling because it's been so long." Number 2. Nikki Ash. Now, upon debuting the superhero persona, fans were concerned that Nikki Ash may have grown stale. They were ultimately correct, as WWE instantly pushed Nikki to the top of the card with a Money in the Bank win and subsequent title win. The push quickly fizzled out and interest in the character dwindled. WWE attempted to tweak the character at the start of 2022 with a heel turn, but this did little to generate new excitement for the character. It's easy to appreciate what WWE and Nikki were trying to do with the character, however it's not a character that appears to work in an impactful manner in 2022. And number 1, Alexa Bliss. When Alexa Bliss joined forces with The Fiend, it gave Bliss a whole new character. She was now a tortured, demented soul, and she appeared to possess supernatural powers. Whilst the reception to this character was mixed, with fans criticizing it for continuing once Bray Wyatt had been released from WWE, the character was a big hit with younger members of the universe. Bliss would be repackaged at the start of 2022, and while she initially wanted to make her persona much darker, WWE had other ideas. Bliss's current gimmick is a hybrid between her goddess character and a prior supernatural-esque gimmick. The issue is that the gimmick lacks a distinct sense of identity. The only true connection that Bliss has to her old gimmick is the Lily doll, which she brings for her matches. It's almost as if WWE wanted Bliss to revert to the goddess persona but insisted that the doll remain part of her character, mainly due to high merchandise sales. Bliss is currently in a state of flux with no meaningful direction, and a lack of defined character is certainly not helping her position in the company. But there you have it, folks, 10 of the worst WWE gimmicks of 2022. Do you guys agree? Let us know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.